We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. This is a live show and we do take in your questions. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address which is ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call in the studio. Inshallah, we'll be able to answer all of your questions. I'm your host this evening, Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Ma'ar. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you this evening?
Alhamdulillah, fine.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah.
Sheikhna, my first question is that when rain falls on something that's najis, does it actually purify the najasa? Let's say if it's on the soil, or if it's on the pavement and so forth, and rain is falling upon the najasa, does it actually, make that place tahir?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. If rain falls on something that is najis or impure, if that aynun najasa or the trace of the najis item, let's say blood or a piece of the dead skin of an animal, a corpse, for example, or feces of human being, for example, it's been removed, and then the rain comes on that particular area and removes the najasa, of course, it becomes tahir. But you have to make sure that the aynun najasa, the trace of the impure, let's say blood or the animal's corpse, for example, or the feces of the human, for example, has been removed. So otherwise, if it rains and that najasa remains on that spot, it won't make it tahir. Rather, it might even spread the najasa more and more from this ayn and najasa to other places. So you have to make sure that you remove this trace of the impure from that spot and position, and let the rain purify that piece of land and make it, of course, tahir.
MashaAllah. Sheikhna, speaking of tahara and so forth, ghusl is a form of tahara we use to purify ourselves. When performing ghusl, let's say I'm in the middle of performing my ghusl, and then I need to, go to the toilet, and as you know, going to the toilet will break your wudu, will break your ghusl as well. So I go to the toilet. After that, do I continue from where I left off from the ghusl? Do I need to restart my ghusl from the beginning? Can I perform wudu and that will substitute for the tahara?
Yes, the one is allowed to continue with his ghusl. There's no issue with that, but the one needs to do wudu again. So basically, for the wudu, you have to do the wudu. So this janaba ghusl won't suffice for the salah. As you know that the rule is ghusl janaba will suffice if somebody wants to perform the salah, the wajib salah or even mustahab salah. But because of the using the toilet, for example, the ghusl will remain as it is. So you can continue finishing from where you left off. Continue finishing the ghusl to the end. But as a obligatory precaution, the one should do the wudu for the salah, basically.
Okay.
That's the issue, because you actually, what you did basically is the ghusl wajib cannot be broken or void except with another janaba.
Okay. So you're talking about the tartib, the sequence cannot be broken? Or
No,
in general,
the sequence
tahara?
should be fine, but what I'm saying that in order for you to be able to repeat the ghusl again and again, is to break the ghusl or the state of the purity by another janaba. So you have to repeat the ghusl again.
Okay.
But if you use the toilet, for example, In the middle of the ghusl, you don't have to repeat the whole ghusl.
I see. It's not considered.
You can, but you don't have to. It's not wajib to repeat the ghusl. Just you have to do the wudu after you finish the ghusl to perform the prayer. Because there was in the middle of the ghusl, the one has relieved himself in the toilet. So they need to do the wudu for the salah, for the purpose of salah. Otherwise, the ghusl is sahih. They can complete to the end of the ghusl.
Shaykh, you mentioned janaba. Now, my next question is in regards to janaba. That some majority of us, I hope, we sleep with our clothes on, and then again we wake up and we need to perform ghusl janaba and so forth. If there is semen on our clothes, do we have to purify our clothes? Is removing the semen enough to make it tahir? I know Sheikh Bashir Najafi, Ayatollah, the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Bashir Najafi, he discusses this. What does he say about this matter?
Well, His Eminence mentions that any parts of the clothes or body or even the mattress, anything that becomes najis, you need to make it tahir and pure. You have to wash it basically. You can't just leave it or just remove it with a tissue, for example. You have to make sure that there's water that purifies this najasa, this impure, so the one can actually use it, let's say for the salah. You can't stand in the salah and there's a spot of najasa on your clothes, which is from the janaba. You have to make sure you wash it, makes it tahir, and then you can use that clothes for the salah.
Sheikh, when washing the clothes, sometimes the stain remains. Now, does this mean that it is still najis, or is it now tahir? So, for example, blood. There might be a blood stain on my shirt. I put it in the washing, I take it out. The red mark is still there, but I've washed it. It doesn't smell of blood or anything like that. Is my shirt tahir or not?
Well, if you have removed the trace of the najis itself, if you have removed the blood itself from your shirt or clothes, then whatever is remained, in terms of the color, let's say a very yellowish color, for example, light yellowish color, that should be fine as long as you have removed the actual najasa. But if you see that dots of najasa, bits of najasa are still there, the clothes will remain najis. So you have to purify this garment or clothes to be able to pray with. Otherwise, it will make other clothing najis as well. So you have to make sure that it has been actually removed completely.
Okay.
But if, as I've said, if a very light color is left due to the of this najasa, then that's no issue with it.
The color, the dye, even sometimes the material isn't, maybe it's too strong for the water to actually go through and clean it properly. So it could be many reasons. Sheikh, I do believe we have a question from the WhatsApp. Our next question is from someone who has emailed us from the audience. While I was in the state of ruku', I doubt that if I have recited Surah Al-Hamd, do I need to abort the salah? Okay, so someone's in the state of ruku', they're not sure whether they recited Surah Al-Hamd before they went into ruku'. Do they need to restart the salah?
You see, what we have in the salah is called tajawuz mahal, is when you pass the next phase and next stage of the salah. As long as you're in ruku' and there was a doubt that you're not sure if you have recited Hamd or Surah, in this case, the one should ignore this doubt and continue the salah, especially if you're in the next phase and stage. Yes, if you were standing and before going to the ruku', you are in doubt. Did I read Hamd or haven't read? Then, of course, you recite Al-Hamd again. Otherwise, if you were just in a position of the ruku' or sujood, that's it. You have to continue with your salah. And this type of shak or doubt is one of those correct doubts in which you have to ignore. You don't have to break or make your salah void and repeat it. Otherwise, you're not allowed to break your salah in this situation. So the one should know these ahkam about salah, so they won't fall into making sins and issues with the salah. You can't just break your salah because of a small mistake. You should know what is the hukum. It's important to know our ahkam in salah in more detail.
Excellent. Sheikh, I believe we have another question from our audience, from our viewers. How should one perform the salat al-ayat after the expiry of the event of the solar or lunar eclipse? So, salat al-ayat meaning one of the signs or the calamities that we have, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, even some say violent storms and so forth, you should pray salat al-ayat. We know about lunar and solar eclipses as well. Now, Sheikh, how does one perform this? First question I actually have is, do you have to start the prayer as soon as the eclipse happens, or do you wait for the event to finish and then do it? And how is it performed?
Well, initially, as soon as it starts, let's say it starts at 7:35 a.m. till 9:35 a.m. You got 2 hours. In these 2 hours, you have to recite and perform the salat al-ayat. However, if somebody didn't know about it and it became qada, or let's say the time passed, and the one woke up, let's say 9 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning, and the salah has been, the eclipse has been just finished. In this case, if the eclipse was a full eclipse, the whole sun or the whole moon was covered, then it is mandatory to do the qada of the salat al-ayat. The full eclipse needs the qada if you haven't done it in time. But if this situation was that it was partial eclipse, just part of the moon or part of the sun, then you don't have to do the qada of the salat al-ayat. So the full moon or full sun, you have to do the qada.
Okay, so partial.
The partial, you don't have to do the qada.
I see. Sheikhna, alcohol we know is najis, and this ethanol, the drinking alcohol that makes you intoxicated, is najis. Sometimes we have alcohol in our medicines. Now, according to his eminence, said his eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, what is his opinion in regards to medicines that contain alcohol? Are we allowed to use these medicines?
Well, initially we have to differentiate between two types of alcohol. We have the intoxicating alcohol, which is used in wine, in champagne, in other haram drinks, in whiskey, for example. This is, of course, a forbidden and haram usage of alcohol in any substance, liquid or solid. You can't use even a drop in any material for consumption, for eating or drinking. Nowadays they use it in chocolates, sadly, and you have to be careful when you buy cakes and chocolates that they don't mix with it. There's no alcohol included. But in overall, the second type is the industrial alcohol, which is used in soaps, shampoos, in perfumes, and in the medication as well. Ayatollah Sistani mentions clearly that it is permissible to use alcohol and consume, but if the amount was very little, as much as 2%.
Okay.
So 2% of alcohol is used in this medicine, for example. If there was more than 2%, then the one should mix this medicine with water, exactly. Dilute it with water, and they can consume it so that, let's say if it's like 4%, it would be reduced to, again, 2% or less. That's the way of dealing with alcohol used if it is excess and more than the 2% given. Of course, this is the opinion of Ayatollah Sistani in this regard.
Excellent. We're going to go to a short break now. Please join us after the break, inshallah. We'll continue our discussion here on Ahkam SOS. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Just a quick reminder to all our viewers that this is a live show, so if you have a question you'd like to ask, please send in your question via the WhatsApp, the email address, which is ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call here in the studio 0203 515 0199, and inshallah we'll be able to discuss your question. Also, we are live on Facebook, and I do believe we have people watching via the Facebook. If you have a question, you can send it in via the Facebook as well, and inshallah we'll be able to discuss that question. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Shaykhna, I do believe we actually have a question from one of our viewers. A person who has run out of money or his vehicle is broken down, is it permissible for him to receive the zakah?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yes, initially it is permissible for such individual to receive zakat, but with a few conditions. Number one, this trouble or this trip is not a trip of sin, safar ma'asi as they mention. So he hasn't gone to a trip to gamble, for example, or to commit forbidden acts, indecent acts, for example. So the zakat is given to him to be able to go back home, because he lost his passport, ticket, and so forth, money and everything. He's got no means of money to be able to pay for his return journey. Also, other conditions that he can't really borrow money. So there's no individuals who can borrow money from them. There's no banks or cash machines where he can withdraw cash from his own account back home, for example. Because nowadays you can easily withdraw money from anywhere. If you have Visa card or MasterCard, you can withdraw even if you're in Africa.
Yeah.
You can easily withdraw money, pay for your ticket, return ticket, and that's it, sorted. Or you can call a friend, transfer for you money from abroad. But let's say he's in a situation that he's lost in nowhere land, in a Sahara desert, for example, and he's got no access to money. Also, he can't really sell some of his belongings. He's got an expensive watch. Can he sell it, for example, to pay for the cost of return? Yes. Otherwise, if he's really in a difficult situation, then of course, the zakat can be given to such individual. There's ayah in the Quran which mentions who deserves to get the zakat. So in Surah At-Tawbah, I believe, ayah 60, وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ, and for the traveler in need, the stranded traveler. He can get the means to go back home, even, I was checking tafsir today, even if he was rich back home. If he was let's say he owns a business, he had staff, he had bank accounts, money, but now he's stuck, stranded. So he can pay for his return ticket as a zakat, and that should be fine.
Shaykhna, when it comes to food and so forth, sometimes we're not aware fully of the ingredients, especially, for example, like you said, you gave the example of chocolate. Now, the default position of chocolate is that it is tahir and it is halal to consume because there's no ingredients which we consider to be haram in those. But here in the West, sometimes there is ingredients which we consider haram and which are used in these products, which traditionally do not have these ingredients used. For example, cakes. Sometimes cakes might have some alcohol for preservatives. I know vanilla extract. You'd never think vanilla extract would have alcohol in it, but sometimes it does have a certain amount of alcohol for preserving it, and so forth. And there's other products and so forth that you may assume are halal, but not. According to His Eminence Sayyid Sistani, as Muslims, is it our duty to go the extra step in order to read the ingredients and to explore and actually educate ourselves on, for example, like that, the E numbers and so forth, on what these ingredients are? Or can we as Muslims assume that this is tahir, and that we don't actually, because we know it's bread, it's tahir, bread is tahir, it's made out of flour and water. Do we need to go the extra step, or no, we don't? We can actually assume and use that until we are informed that this stuff has some najasa in it. Sayyid Sistani actually has a fatwa on this. What does he say?
Yes, His Eminence mentions that it is permissible to eat such food as long as it is not known that it contains the, let's say, meat fat or haram meat and chicken fat, for example. In overall, you don't know about. the ingredients. Sometimes you pick a chocolate bar or biscuits and you don't know anything about it. Maybe it's the language from European language, for example. You can't read anything. In oval, if you don't know that this is haram or not haram, you can use it. Or let's say you go to the supermarkets and you pick for your lunch, let's say hummus or fried samosas, for example, vegetable samosas, or fried falafel, for example. But you don't know who fried it and what type of oil they have used.
Yeah.
You have to assume that it's a tahir, inshallah. It's pure. There's no issue with it, unless you discover that no, they have added, for example, animal fats within the fried and so forth. Otherwise, you're allowed to eat, unless you've been told, or you can read. It says that, for example, pork, I don't know, gelatin or and so forth.
Understood. MashaAllah. Sheikh, our next question, I believe, is from one of our viewers. What is the ruling about making jokes that annoy friends and loved ones?
You see, definitely annoying those individuals is haram. You cannot annoy others by mocking or making jokes. And I think we read a hadith with this regard a couple of episodes ago that Imam Hussein TV said to an individual who was mocking people in Medina that tell him that those who are falsified will be the losers in the day of judgment. إن لله يوما يخسر فيه المبطلون. There's a day in which those who falsify in this way, mock others in this way, will be the losers. So we have to fear Allah Azza wa Jal and have piety and taqwa, that we shouldn't act in a way that we're going to get trouble on such a crucial day, a day of judgment, resurrection day. There's a holy verse in Quran, Surah 49, Ayah 11. Allah states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم. Or you who believe, no people shall mock other people, for they may be better than them. So mocking others will, of course, causes the one to fall into the acts of haram. Of course, this is some kind of Satan's net and trap that gradually causes other acts of haram as well. The hadith from Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam, again with this regard, the Imam says, لا تمازح فيجترأ عليك. Do not mock others, otherwise they will insult you. You've seen some people that they try to mock others and suddenly they get a
backlash.
in a situation, exactly, backlash or even a punch sometimes. So yes, you should know your level. I remember one of the ulama used to say that if you want to joke, then joke to as minimum as the pinch of a salt. That's it. This much you do joke, just a bit, and that's it. Go back to your work, your duty. We have other duties. We have ibadah, we have work, we have, family. You can't just spend your life joking and laughing. And in many of the narrations of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, they mention that the mu'min is the one who وَبَكَى عَلَى خَطِيئَتِهِ, and he cries on his sins and wrongful acts. But we don't cry. Why don't we cry? Because we are not aware of ourselves in terms of what we are doing now. That's why we don't cry. Our eyes are dry. I pray, even namaz shab, maybe I don't cry, for example. Which is the best time for us to remember ourselves, our sins, to remind ourselves of the hellfire and the paradise. So it's the best moment for us to cry in this moment, especially the month of Ramadan, in the Sahar time. So we have to basically understand that people have sanctity. They have hurmah. We have to respect this hurmah and sanctity of the mu'min. And we can joke, but pinch of salt. Just a bit. Don't go too much.
Sheikhna, my next question is, in regards to gold. Now, men are not supposed to wear gold.
Yeah.
But there are some circumstances, where gold is acceptable. Wearing a watch, which may have some parts which are gold-plated, or maybe like the strap is gold or so forth. Can a man wear such a watch and pray with it and so forth? His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sistani, I believe, has a fatwa on it. What does he say in regards to gold watches or partially gold watches?
The Sayyid mentions that it is not permissible for the man to wear gold, let's say in a watch, for example, and the salah would be batil and void with this watch which has gold on it. So we have to avoid wearing gold. It's specifically for the females, for the ladies, not for men. There's a hadith which says that the day will come in a way that men will look like women. يتشبه الرجال بالنساء and vice versa.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't really try to imitate and copy the opposite gender. So it's bad.
I remember I was in a discussion with one of my friends, and he told me that for a man, when he wears gold, it actually releases certain poisons in the man. It's not suited for a man to wear gold. That's why it has the wrong, you could say, energy and the wrong reaction to the male's body. Whereas for the female, it's the opposite. It has a better reaction for them.
You see, even if the science proved one day that wearing gold for men is bad, or let's say wearing silk for men is not good, for example, at the end of the day, we believe in the Sharia of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is Allah's Sharia and rule and legislation. We believe sometimes in legislation of a country that we live in. we accept and surrender and submit to the traffic law of the country, the traffic system. We respect it. We respect the speed limit, for example, the red traffic light. We stop, and so forth. So we have to have a complete faith in Allah's laws and legislation. We shouldn't really become skeptics or raise doubts about why Allah Azza wa Jal allows a man so he can marry four, for example, and so forth. We have to understand that Allah is the one who legislates, and He's wise, and He's the most knowledgeable and powerful, and so forth. All the sifat of Allah Azza wa Jal. We shouldn't really reach that position of raising these doubts. We have to submit, because we are Muslims, which means Islam, submission to Allah and His rules. Azza wa Jal.
Well said, Shaykhna. I believe we have a question from one of our viewers as well. Is it permissible for the teacher to discriminate between the talented and the non-talented pupils? Something that causes some of the pupils to resent.
Well, you see, it is permissible to encourage those who have talents and more intelligent, and they have capabilities in terms of showing their capabilities. We are allowed to encourage them, but in the same time, we shouldn't disrespect and downgrade those who have difficulty in understanding and comprehending. Instead, we have to support them. Maybe have classes after school, 1 or 2 hours, let's say, in math and English. We try to help them, for example. Nowadays, you can do even online classes, so you can actually talk to the student who's in need of more classes and teaching online, and you give them support. So we have to give them support instead of disrespecting or downgrading them. So we have to balance the situation in overall.
Shaykhna, sending salam is, obviously a great act, and replying to the salam as well. Some even say to the extent it is wajib to reply to a salam. Other than salam, other greetings, is it obligatory upon us to respond to those greetings as well? His Eminence, the late Sayyid Muhammad Shirazi, rahmatullah alayh, he comments and discusses this question. What is his fatwa? What is his opinion on this?
He would mention that it is commonly accepted that not being obligatory and wajib. The wajib is that when somebody says salamun alaykum, you reply wa alaykum as-salam or salamun alaykum. Even if you're in salah, it's wajib to reply back to the salam of the one who is saying salamun alaykum. But other than that, hi, hello, it's not wajib to reply back.
I see.
The wajib is the salam of the Islam, and the salam which is mentioned in the Holy Quran, salamun alaykum, I think the Malaika would say to those who are going to paradise, Salamun alaykum. So the word Salamun alaykum is in the Holy Quran as well. So yes, it's wajib to reply back to the one who is saying Salamun alaykum.
Shaykhna, with eggs, sometimes the eggs have a spot of blood or a dot of blood on them. Is it halal for us to consume these eggs or not? His Eminence, the Ayatollah Bashir, Sheikh Bashir Najafi discusses this. What does he say in regards to these eggs with red dots on them, spots of blood?
His Eminence mentions that this blood is impure, najis, number one. Number two, if you want to consume this egg, you have to separate this amount of blood from the egg. Separate it, but make sure it doesn't mix with the egg, otherwise the whole egg will become najis, so you can't consume it. So if you separate it safely from the egg, then you can actually consume the egg in this situation. Otherwise, if this blood mixes with the egg, then you can't consume it.
Okay.
Especially those, I think there's a type of eggs which has always, or most of the time, blood in it. I think the yellow ones. Or
okay, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not really a big egg eater.
Exactly, yeah. So we have to be careful when we actually want to fry the eggs. Make sure that you remove this part. And I think the best types of eggs are the white eggs.
Okay.
I haven't seen any blood since I've been using them. Fried eggs and so forth. They are the safest eggs in terms of the blood. So the white eggs are more recommended if you want to avoid the situation.
Ahsan. Sheikh, I believe I have a question from one of our viewers. Is it permissible to use girls in order to attract customers or promote products? Now with this we see a lot in the West, especially in the last, you could say, 30 years, that they use ladies, sometimes good-looking ladies, sometimes ladies who are dressed indecent as well. But in general, even in the Muslim countries we see with hijab and everything, but we use ladies to promote certain products and so forth. Is this Islamically acceptable?
Well, it is not permissible at all. And that is type of spreading indecency. At the end of the day, this will attract, the others. Maybe some would think differently, sadly. Although this is a professional business, let's say, company and so forth. But the shaitan is out there. The corrupt society is also out there. And the nafs al-ammara, the ego, the evil selfness is also out there. That would eventually causes this society to be corrupt and indecent. Eventually. We have this in the West. We've seen this immoral friendship, for example, indecent relationships and so forth. So, and also for the opposite gender as well. If you bring handsome, beautiful young men as well, the same thing, to attract the opposite gender and so forth. So one should rely on Allah Azza wa Jal in getting the sustenance and the rizq. Allah is the raziq, sustainer, not my power, my wealth, my intelligence, my abilities and capabilities. Allah is the one, He is the number one in sending the rizq. Of course, I have to put the efforts and wake up early and go to work and so forth. But I shouldn't use such haram methods in order to gain more money. Otherwise, we can sell alcohol as well. Makes more money. We can sell drugs, na'udhu billah. But whatever is forbidden, haram, we should avoid it. And leave it to Allah Azza wa Jal, who will bring barakah when we sell halal products and items, and in a halal method and way. Allah will bring the barakah and blessing more and more. But we have to have a good faith and submission to Allah Azza wa Jal.
Shaykhna, here in the West, is it, mandatory or is it recommended? Can a lady wear the veil, the face covering here in the West? Very, very popular back home, even in my country, Pakistan. A lot of my family members would wear it when they're out in public and so forth. Here in the West, there's two sides to the story. Number one, we are allowed to practice our religion very freely. But secondly, with the likes of Islamophobia and stuff, some of our sisters unfortunately have been verbally attacked, some physically attacked and so forth for wearing the veil. So here in the West, are we allowed to wear the veil for the sisters? Can they wear it?
Well, you see, the niqab or the burqa is something very controversial for the past few days and years. In overall, it is mustahab to wear the veil on the face for the woman, not wajib. Especially, it becomes wajib when there's a makeup on the face. So let's say this sister is going to a wedding ceremony, for example, or to a party, for example, and she's wearing makeup. She has to cover the face with the niqab or burqa to avoid showing her beauty to the strangers and to the non-mahram outside in the street. Otherwise, it's not wajib, although it's mustahab to wear, but it's not wajib. And our ulama in overall say that she can show her face and her hand, to cover up to the wrist, and show her hand and the face without makeup, without any beautification. Mm-hmm. She's allowed to show it. Other than that, she's not allowed to show. She has to cover everything.
I see. Thank you very much, Sheikhna, for all your time and all your efforts. And thank you for everyone for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. If you have a question you'd like to ask, send it in via the WhatsApp, send it in via the email address, send it in via Facebook if you want. Call us 0203-515-0199. Look, we don't need to know your name. We don't need to know where you're asking from. Everything is made anonymous. You can anonymously send your question. There's no question that we find boring or uninteresting or taboo or silly or so forth. It's our duty here to give you your answer here on Ahkam SOS. If you want a question answered in particular to an opinion of a certain marja, we have the contacts, we have the relations with the grand official offices and also the official representatives as well. And we will go to get your answer. Inshallah, we'll be back on Wednesday night for another episode of Ahkam SOS. See you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.